Same time, we have changes occurring on the regional level. For example, Kerala is getting less and less rainfall every year. Chhattisgarh and that region, adjoining parts of Orissa, those regions again will be getting, we are getting again less and less rainfall. Whereas parts of Maharashtra, Rajasthan, they are getting more and more rainfall. If you really analyze the daily rainfall, the extreme rainfall events, there's a substantial increase in the extreme rainfall events.
Welcome to Water from the Indian Express, a series that explores water in all the ways it enters our lives. I'm Amiya Nagarajan. We've been talking about the monsoon, how important it is to India in so many different ways, and how we track and measure it. In my conversations with the rain men, as I like to think of these scientists, and other experts, everyone came back to one thing: the monsoon is changing.
For some parts of central and north India, we see a consistent pattern in the changes in the monsoon. Specifically, there is a decline in rainfall in this region at about 1 millimeter per year.
There has been a tendency for the rains to be, concentrated. Probably these drizzles have stopped. Now probably the rains, it is all sort of, it pours. When it rains, it pours.
What does this mean? Well, we seem to be getting the same amount of rain every year. When the Met Department predicts the monsoon, they tell us how it's going to be based on an average of the total monsoon rain received every year over the past 50 years, what the rainmen call the long period average. At the moment, the LPA is about 89 centimeters, and it seems to be quite stable.
But on a large time scale of 100 years, if you take, monsoon is stable. So that's a good news.
That was M. Rajivan, Secretary of the Ministry of Earth Sciences. He was telling Soumya about what's been happening to the rainfall.
We have changes occurring on the regional level. For example, Kerala is getting less and less rainfall every year. Chhattisgarh and that region, adjoining parts of Orissa, those regions again will be getting, we are getting again less and less rainfall. Whereas parts of Maharashtra, Rajasthan, they are getting more and more rainfall. So these are regional changes in the regional rainfall pattern. That's all happening, number one. Number two, this is I'm talking about mean rainfall, mean seasonal rainfall. So all India rainfall is not changed. But if you calculate, if you really analyze the daily rainfall, the extreme rainfall events, there's a substantial increase in the extreme rainfall events which are happening. And number of days in which it rains also reduced. So now instead of 25-30 days of rains, we get only 15 or 16 days. And I said the mean is same. That means when it rains more heavily.
Roxy Matthew Cole from the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology agrees. Roxy told me that the patterns of rain had changed and that we were going to see extreme events.
I am Roxy Matthew Cole. I work at the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology in Pune. It's an institute under the Ministry of Earth Sciences. So my research has mostly been about how the human interactions have changed the characteristics of the monsoon, mainly through greenhouse gas emissions. Now the problem is that it is not just that the monsoon is declining. Along with the slow drying in some parts of this country, there is an increased propensity for widespread extreme rainfall events, which can cause flood. And we see a threefold increase in these kind of widespread extreme rain from about 2 events in the early 1950s to about 6 events in the current century. So that is huge. So at the same time, the total rainfall is declining. The number of widespread extreme rains which can cause flood are also increasing. So that brings us a huge challenge. So these extreme rains which bring floods do not compensate for the less total rainfall. And most of it just cause either landslides or loss to agriculture or just flow into the rivers or just get evaporated. So they do not compensate for the less rainfall you receive during the season.
Extreme events are very difficult to predict, and Rajivan told Soumya that they will be the biggest challenge we face with the weather in 2018. He also explained what the Ministry of Earth Sciences is trying to do about it.
And as a head of the Ministry of Earth Sciences in 2018, what are the specific challenges of this year?
If you ask me one biggest challenge I'll be talking about extremes only. And we should expect a lot of extremes in immediate future, especially heat waves, heavy rainfall events, and like kind of air pollution emergency. These are the three important things which we can mention. So, and if heavy rainfall means it can lead to urban floods like Chennai flood and Mumbai flood, and it can give a flash flood especially in the hilly areas. And general flood because of the consistent rain for 2-3 days consistently over river basins can lead to. So flooding is an important thing which we can. Then of course along the coast we have tropical cyclones. So that also we have a threat.
Why is this happening though? Why is the monsoon changing? The obvious answer is climate change, which Roxy confirmed. Essentially, the amount of carbon dioxide we've been producing since the start of the Industrial Revolution has basically doubled the amount of carbon dioxide that's retained in the atmosphere. Now, carbon dioxide is really important, and we need it in the atmosphere. Whenever the sun sends heat in the direction of the earth, it basically bounces off into space. It's the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that stops that and keeps the planet warm enough to sustain life. Without carbon dioxide, we'd basically be a frozen lump like Pluto. But now, with twice the carbon dioxide, there's a lot of extra heat that's retained.
Most of this extra heat goes into the ocean, and the distribution pattern of the heat across land, ocean, and atmosphere changes. So, one of the interesting factors about this heat distribution is that what we have found during the past 60, 70 years, that is since the 1950s, is that a lot of heat in this greenhouse warming has gone into the Indian Ocean. So the Indian Ocean has warmed up to about 1.2 degrees Celsius. The mean global warming is around 0.7, 0.8 degrees Celsius or 0.9 degrees Celsius for the past century. But the warming over the Indian Ocean is much more than that. Meanwhile, the Indian subcontinent has not warmed that much compared to the Indian Ocean.
We know the monsoon happens because the land is hotter than the sea, which is what moves the clouds in from the sea. But when the temperature difference between the land and the sea is very small, it kind of breaks the mechanism. And then the monsoon is late, or the rain is less, or in some way it's just off pattern.
But now that heat distribution has changed because of Indian Ocean warming. This has kind of weakened the strength of the monsoon wind. And this has also decreased the intensity of the monsoon circulation. So basically, the monsoon has weakened and resulted in a decline in the rainfall during the past several decades. This means that the monsoon has become more and more irregular in nature, both in time and space.
It's clear that there is a change in the monsoon, which we're seeing manifested as more dry days and therefore more rain on the wet days, which means more extreme weather. What does this mean for our agriculture and economy? The India Economic Survey 2018-19 found that the impact of temperature and rainfall shows up only when it hits extremes, and that this impact is much stronger on rain-fed agriculture, like pulses, than it is on irrigated agriculture. Of course, if the rivers are not replenished either by rain or snow, eventually they run out of water, and then irrigated agriculture will also be impacted. But what is really scary is what the survey has to say about the effect of this on farmer incomes. They project current trends using the predicted temperature increases of the International Panel on Climate Change, and they calculate that we can expect a 15 to 25% decline in farmer income unless we do something about it. And farmer income, on top of actual agricultural production, is really important to the economy. You remember Harish from our first episode?
I'm Harish Damodaran. I'm the Rural Affairs and Agriculture Editor of the Indian Express. See, farmers have very high consumption spending propensity. People who are very rich, they tend to save more out of incremental income. Whereas farmers probably spend whatever they earn. And definitely in rural areas, farm income is still, I think, the dominant driver. Whether it is to do with construction, so cement, steel, building a house, marrying off my daughter, right? If my payments are in time, if I have enough to think, then I'll marry off my daughter this year.
When I asked Harish, with all his experience in rural affairs and economics, what he thought about this looming crisis, his answer was not at all what I expected.
See today, one thing which is very clear, you look at any crop today, there is surplus. I think there are two things which are happening here. One is, I think the science of genetics is far ahead of climate change. I think the science of crop breeding is becoming more and more sophisticated. And the second is, I think, the supply response. There is better infrastructure today. There is better roads. There is irrigation. There is more information. Right, so I think the farmer is able to respond very fast to price signals today. So climate may change, it may do anything, but I don't agree with the economic survey. Dr. Arvind Subramanian is a good friend, but I don't agree with the conclusions. I don't believe that India is going to be efficient in agriculture production, because I think we are potentially a world power, according to me, in agriculture. And we can, and I think our farmers, we underestimate the ability of our farmers.
So the outlook isn't necessarily bleak, at least from the perspective of agriculture. But the other problems still remain, because we still need water to drink, and nowhere in India is really equipped to deal with floods. The problem of rivers is, in fact, as bad, if not more, because any backup irrigation will need to come from the rivers, and they are our next best source of fresh water. And rivers have to deal with more than just climate change.
I would suggest that these are the following are the main threats and problems that the rivers in India face. Besides the pollution due to both urban and industrial pollution, and also the non-point pollution like the rural sewage or the agricultural waste. Besides that, there is the threat because of the big dams, the hydropower projects, all kinds of hydropower projects, the unsustainable sand mining, the encroachment not only on the floodplain but also on the river bed.
Next week, I set out to find out about India's rivers, starting with the Yamuna. I am Amya Nagarajan, and this is Water, an Indian Express series.